Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Her Version. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I am speaking with an amazing woman named Leah Collins. Leah is a strong, beautiful woman who has gone through a whirlwind of challenges over the years. She is here to share her journey in order to inspire women all over the world about the tough decisions that are put in front of us and how we need to navigate through them. Leah called off her engagement 6 weeks before her wedding. She is killing it in the world of finance. She recently gave birth to a baby girl and is here to set us straight when it comes to what it means to be a responsible woman, what it means to communicate openly, and how calling off her wedding just might have been one of the best decisions she's ever made. Welcome, Leah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you. I so appreciate you taking some time out of your day to sit down with me and share your journey. You and I actually connected real good on our first phone call, more than usual, not trying to take away from anybody else's phone calls because I connect with everybody. But you really hit a chord with me in some of these topics that we're going to be covering. So I'm low key super greedy about today's podcast because I just want to pull from your journey and what you've been through and all the nuggets of information that you have that you are now opening up and sharing with people. I so appreciate females like you who take their story and not only learn from their story. We all want to be learning from our stories, but decide to teach with their story. So I think that's so cool.
Thank you.
Yes. So how has your Thursday been?
You know how my Thursday has been. It has been crazy and hectic. Nothing went as planned, but it's fine. I made it work.
We're here.
Yes.
We are here. Well, listen, I would love to kind of just hand the floor over to you. I don't know or remember kind of what came first, whether the engagement stuff came first or the financial stuff came first. I could guess, but I kind of want you to kind of just tell the story in the flow of this experience that you're opening up and you're starting to share with the world, and kind of tell us how this journey looked for you, and then we can kind of go in and figure out what you learned and all the things that you're teaching now.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Well, the financial journey came first. So back in 2017, I was looking at my tax returns and I saw how much money I had made. I think that was the first time, or maybe the second. I think it was the second time I had made well over six figures. And I had absolutely nothing to show for it. My savings was still low. My credit wasn't the best. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't best. I didn't have any investments. It was terrible. So I decided at that point to do something about it. So I took a financial course. And within 18 months, I paid off $40,000 worth of debt. I purchased investment property and I increased my credit score to over 800.
Yes.
Thank you. And at that point, I decided to start a business to help other people do the same. So I did that for a few years. And then in 2019, I got engaged. And we had been off and on for a very long time, about 10 to 12 years. We got engaged. Things were going okay at first, but then there were red flags, right? There were signs. But at that point, we're engaged. I don't want to call anything off. He doesn't want to call anything off. Money's been spent on the ring, on the wedding. There's the social stigma around it. Like, it's embarrassing to call the wedding off. But 6 weeks before the wedding, enough was enough. And we called it off. And at that point, I decided I wanted to help other couples who were in similar situations with their finances. So we did take premarital counseling, right? But premarital counseling is when it comes to finances, is very, very high level. It's not usually very helpful. And one thing that I found is, as I was saying, a lot of times after you're engaged, it's kind of too late. It's not too late, but it's much harder to call it off. So I focus more so on people who are very serious and who are thinking about getting engaged, and I help them determine their financial compatibility and how to plan for their financial futures and try to set them up for success.
That's awesome. What an interesting thing to come out of all of this. So, not trying to pry or anything, you don't have to answer, but was, the circle or the cycle that I'm seeing around finances, was that one of the sort of kind of issues that you and your ex had?
Yes. Yes,
It was. So
Yeah.
so this is something that you are taking from your personal experience and then actually keeping other couples from enduring a lifelong, right?
Right.
A
Right.
life.
Because, or maybe you don't know, but 1 in 2 marriages end in divorce. And the second leading cause of divorce is finances. So it's very important to try to get that right up front so that you increase your chances for success.
Wow. First is, I'm guessing, cheating.
Yes.
Yes.
I
Wow.
don't know why I smiled when I said that. That's horrible. But yeah.
I hear you. Now, I'm assuming that once you kind of started talking about your story out, first of all, how long did it take you after all this to finally sit down and be like, you know what? I'm going to be freaking real and talk about this part of my life. How long did that take you?
It was about a year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I kept hoping maybe we'd get back together. Maybe we work things out. And then once I realized that wasn't going to happen, I was just still embarrassed and I didn't want to talk about it. But then finally I decided, you know what? I'm going to turn my pain into power and help other women.
Yes, absolutely. And absolutely, because this is, well, obviously, you just said the statistics, but I think that this is an issue that a lot of men and women,
Yes.
right? Men and women deal with, as far as linking up with the wrong person, because we're not necessarily getting down to the nitty gritty of the communication that we should be having pre-wedding.
Right.
I'm sure that there was a lot of people that were kind of like sliding into your DMs, asking questions.
Yes. And I was surprised at how many people could relate. I knew I'd have a fair share of women who could relate, but as you were saying, men and women, it impacts both of them. And I had a lot of men reaching out who were in similar situations, and called off their weddings or thought, okay, well, maybe I'm engaged now. Maybe I should call it off. Yeah, I was overwhelmed by the positive response and how many people could relate to what I was saying.
Yes.
Resonated with other people.
Yes, yes, yes. So as far as, we all know the basics, right? Why not to marry certain people. But we're kind of concentrating on, a certain kind, or kind of like a certain topic, which is kind of revolving around finances, kind of revolving around making sure that, what else? What else? What are the other couple of things that we should be kind of concentrating on first thing?
As far as finance, well, first of all, do you have a shared vision and goals? Do they align? That's very, very important. Also, what are your values, right? Another big thing is gender roles, or roles in general.
Yes.
Yeah, that was something that kind of came as a surprise to me because we operated a certain way while we were dating. But while married, he had a more traditional idea of how a wife should be, which is fine if you both agree. But I mean,
yeah,
I agree to that. But so yeah, that's very, very important. Figure out who does what in the household. Kids is extremely important as well. First of all, do you want kids? How many kids do you want? If you're not able to have kids naturally, do you want to adopt kids? I know some people who have said if they can't have kids naturally, they just want to get a divorce. They want to walk away. I've seen people do that or say that. Religion is very important.
absolutely.
Yeah, cultural differences. Especially now with more people marrying outside of their culture and outside of their race. Me and my fiance, I'm Black American. He was originally from Nigeria. There are a lot of similarities, but there are huge, huge differences.
Wow.
As well. Yeah.
Culturally, I'm assuming.
Right. So an example is Nigeria is a very collectivist society. Do you know what that is? It's more about the community, about the whole. There's a hierarchy there. Whereas the Americans are more individualistic, more self-sufficient. So an example with us would be maybe we'd have a disagreement and I want to work it out between the two of us, but he wants to call together the community, the moms, the aunties, things like that.
Wow.
It's fine, but there's potential for clash there if you don't, work that out and figure out how that's going to look in your relationship.
That can get uncomfortable because then people are kind of taking sides, possibly.
Yeah, and one thing I don't like about, again, it's okay sometimes, but your relatives and your friends, a lot of times you may forgive your spouse or your partner, but they don't. They don't forgive that.
Yes. That's one thing that I learned early on with just dating in general is to keep my mouth closed because sometimes you end up back with them more than once and then it's friggin' super awkward.
Yes.
So I'd like to kind of pull from you. Like I have my own answer for this, but you're dealing with so many clients in and around this arena now. I would love to kind of hear from you as far as I don't want to say excuses, but the excuses as to why we don't communicate about these things, why we are marrying people that we're not compatible with, and how do we avoid doing that?
People avoid it. It's just uncomfortable. And a lot of times there's shame involved. Maybe one person doesn't make as much as the other spouse, or they're scared that if one person does make more and they want to bring up finances or bring up a prenup, they'll seem greedy, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe the other person who makes less, that they don't want to bring it up because they'll be seen as a gold digger. There's all kinds of reasons that it's taboo. But what was the second part of your question?
How do we avoid it? Like, how do we get past all these, what you're talking about, the blocks, and just say, F it. I'm going to just freaking say all the things. How do we do that?
Well, I think a one way to start is premarital counseling.
Okay.
Because one part of premarital counseling is communication, right? Which is a huge part. A lot of times you think the issue is money, but it's not. It's really communication or some underlying issue like ego or pride. So that's one thing. And just education. So for example, I told you that I have my premarital counseling program or coaching program that helps people initiate these discussions. Mm-hmm. So that's another good way as well. And there's also subtle ways to bring it up, right? Like I tell people that these conversations should come up early within the first few dates. And you can bring it up.
Wow. No.
There's subtle ways to do it. So I give this example sometimes. Say the person I'm on a date with is like, hey, what are you doing next weekend? Oh, I'm shopping for houses. I'm looking for an investment property. And then naturally the conversation is going to turn to the current state of real estate and the economy. And then you can kind of gauge where their money mindset is at that point. There's always way. Money always comes up whether we realize it or not.
Beautiful. What a sneaky way. That's a great way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if they're completely clueless and they're, in their 40s.
Right.
So listen, while we're talking here, I'm just thinking to myself early on, average age to start like really seriously dating is young, like 18 years old. And I'm just thinking to myself, the awkwardness of having conversations like this, like I was so naive and stupid. I don't even know how this would even happen. So if we're talking to a woman, for instance, who's 23,
Mhm.
how does she go about even speaking to her man about this when he's still working as a sales associate at Best Buy? Like, how
I'm
does that even work?
sorry, my computer's about to die. I had to plug
Fine.
up the cord. Okay. Okay.
So,
Again, like I said before, subtly.
yeah,
You don't have to just go, "Hey, what's your credit score?" You know.
yeah,
You can say, "Hey, I'm taking." So what I did was I took a course. So maybe she can say something like, "Hey, I'm taking this course. What do you think?" Or "I'm reading a book," or "I'm drowning in student loans. Like this is what I'm thinking about doing to pay them off." There's always ways you can bring up the conversation.
as far as how much we change mentally, though, like, I didn't know anything about any of this stuff when I was 23 or 24 years old. But now, if you ask me anything revolving, I got all my shit together. I'm like,
Right. Right.
so like, I don't even, that's interesting. So I guess, just depending on the age, the conversation will ebb and flow according to
Right.
age appropriately.
Exactly. And like you said, a lot of it just depends on our experience. So had I
Yeah.
got engaged when I was in college or 23 years old, I would have that wouldn't have even been on my mind to
Yeah.
ask about money, to talk about money, to talk about prenups, to talk about gender role. Like that, I think a lot of it just depends on like life and things that we've experienced as we, go through our journeys.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Or what you've seen. A lot of people, they'll initiate the discussions because maybe they saw their parents go through a divorce and how their mother was devastated or their father was devastated financially. So really, a lot of it, I think, just depends on your experiences.